This is our first episode of the North Star podcast, and Adam Bennett from Amazon, who's a principal engineer, is our first guest. I'm not going to attempt a very formal introduction because this is meant to be a super informal chat between two people. But I will definitely start by saying one thing because I know Adam won't say it about himself, is that the one thing that makes Adam stand out is how approachable and how ready to help others he is, even though he's super busy, he's principal engineer, and it's not a very common trait, let me say that, but it, that's what makes Adam stand out. And let's jump straight in, Adam. Thank you so much for your time today. And do you want to tell our listeners, our viewers, how we know each other?
Yes, absolutely. So firstly, thank you for having me, and thank you for that amazing introduction. It's very nice to hear nice things. So hopefully, hopefully I live up to expectations. But no, so how do we know each other? So we both worked at Amazon together. I'm going to completely get the timeline wrong. It was, when was it? 2000 and I'm going to say 18 to 21. Did I get that right?
Bang on. That's really good.
Did I really? Oh wow.
Yeah, almost 22, but yeah.
Ah, right. Okay,
That's
cool.
right.
Yeah. So Bhavna and I worked at Amazon together in different teams.
Mhm.
Slightly different orgs, but yeah, no, we worked together at that time. I did manage to get your name wrong for, I think, the first year of us working together, and Bhavna chose not to correct me. It wasn't until we were in a group meeting and someone mentioned Bhavna, and I was like, "Who's Bhavna? Do you mean Bhavana?" But there we go. I think I first said your name out loud in front of you when we were doing a phone screen for someone, so it probably
Yes.
wasn't the time to correct me. But there you go. Yes, got your name wrong for the first year.
Was it the whole year? I can't
I,
remember.
I think it was. I think it was about that amount of time. Maybe it was slightly less. Maybe I'm doing myself a disservice there. But I do
Yeah, I
remember
don't think.
the
Yeah, I
shock
don't.
horror of.
No, to be fair, a lot of people called me Bhavana after knowing me for a really long time. So it's okay. That has almost become my alternate name now. Uh, yeah,
There you go.
I've
I don't feel quite so bad. But
yeah, no. There have been weird things I've been called. Um, anyway,
we'll save
so
that one for later.
yeah, so let's start from the beginning, Adam. How did you end up as a software engineer? Did you always want to be a software engineer? Tell us the beginning of your story.
Oh wow. Okay, so yeah, I don't know how good my camera is. So I'm not the youngest person in the world. So my computer stories go back way back. I think I got an Amstrad, which was a cassette-based computer, for
Oh,
Christmas when I was
interesting.
really old. I think I was like 5 or something.
Wow. Okay.
That was quite cool. It was basic, and I think it was at the moment. So 10 print hello, 20 go to 10.
Yeah.
30 run, and it just goes crazy. But I think it was at the point when I realized what was going on. I could make it say things to my sister that it was really like a wow moment. And yeah, I've just interested in computers since then. Another old technology most of your listeners probably wouldn't have heard of. I had an Amiga 1200, which I
No
absolutely
idea.
loved. No, I managed to go all the way up to my A levels in that thing without converting
Wow.
to a PC.
Uh-huh.
Those people that know me, maybe I've got a thing for old technology. Eclipse is my IDE of choice. I'm quite
Even now.
unique. Still now, yeah. Even
Okay.
the other day when I decided to add a few metrics to something, I struggled through with making it work. So yeah, maybe a slightly quirky interest in technology, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, but I did that. I studied maths and computing at A level. Went on to do computer science at university. At the time, it was one of two places in Europe that was accredited by Sun Microsystems, who owned Java at the time, as
Awesome.
a Java accredited campus. So that was quite cool. And then, yeah, after graduating, went into software development. I've worked in insurance.
Hmm.
I've worked in finance. I've done kind of software that's sold to customers. I've done software within companies. Um, yeah, my previous role was at an investment bank. I was there for about 7 years, and then I moved to Amazon. Been here about 7.5 years now. So yeah, been a few places. The last two have been the ones that I've been at for quite a while.
It's very interesting, and it's very similar to, I mean, except for the love for whole technology, it's very similar to my story where at a very young age I was introduced to coding, and I enjoyed it. Um, in my case, it wasn't to annoy my sister, but I remember one of the first programs I wrote in BASIC was to calculate the simple interest given parameters. So given
Yep,
I don't know, the interest rate, the time, and the initial principal amount. You calculate the principal in the simple interest, um, and I thought it was like magic, and that kind of it was like a chain reaction, which sounds like it was for you too. That I ended up choosing the right subjects to get into somewhere towards computer science in
yep,
university.
yep. Your story there reminds me of another one. So I mentioned I ended up getting bought this Amiga when I was still a child.
Mhm.
But my dad quite likes horse racing and stuff like that. And he mentioned,
Okay.
oh, his brother's got this thing on his computer that can work out how much he's winning for this, that, and the other. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh, I can make my new computer that you've bought me do that. And at the point, I wrote something to work out how much my dad was going to win for his horse racing, which he hardly ever did. But he considered that a good return on his investment. He could give me
That's
some numbers to type
amazing.
in. Yeah.
So he was your first user, and you started backwards from your customer, which is
Without even realizing it. Wow. Yeah, no,
right.
that's yeah, there we
So
go.
born Amazonian right there.
It was yeah, no, it's yeah, rooted at an early age. I hadn't made that connection, but there you go.
That's great. So okay, so that's how you got into the field. There is I feel like there's almost two situations you can be in when you get started with your software engineering career. You can somehow land up in a team that doesn't care so much about writing good code, uh, good practices for testing, delivering quality product for your customer, because I've definitely met teams that aren't so much into that. But your initial experiences with the people that you work with as your second job can really shape the type of engineer you become. Um, do you share these feelings, and do you think that the initial experiences that you had at your first or second job kind of shaped you into what you've become today?
Yeah, definitely. So my first job was interesting. So it was a software company that was
Mhm.
owned by an insurance company. So it started off as a small insurance company, father and son,
Mhm.
developed into a bigger insurance company. They had an IT department that became a software company, but we basically provided the software that they used to. It was taxi software, so taxi agents all
Okay.
over the country
Mhm.
use this software. I'll stress that this was quite a while ago in terms of time, so the technology wasn't as cutting edge as it was now. But the good thing about that was, you had to be really disciplined in your approach to software development. So
Mhm.
we didn't have your Git repositories and things like that. We had a kind of a process where you had to move some code into your workspace, and other team members couldn't touch it while it's there and things like that. So we didn't have the technology controls in place, but as a result, it forced you to be a bit more due diligence with the things you're doing and stuff like that. And yeah, our users, it was a multi-floor building, but our users were literally sat above us. So anything that didn't work, they could come down and talk to us and things like that. So we had that kind of good connection with the business.
Mhm.
We knew very much why we were writing the software we were writing. I think that's sometimes a difference in some scenarios you're writing software and you don't really understand why. I was fortunate that my first role, I knew exactly who my business users were. If we were doing something to expand the claims system on the insurance software, for example, we could go and sit with the claims manager, talk to her, and understand what she really wanted from it. So um, yeah, I think I was very lucky to get that kind of exposure to, oh, this is why you're doing what you're doing. early
Mm.
on, and I think that stuck with me a little bit as as time's gone on, and it's yeah, I think that aspect definitely helped shape um, who I've turned into.
Interesting. So two things I want to touch upon here. First is the due diligence bit. I understand that you didn't have systems to, you didn't have CI/CD, you didn't even have repositories. I cannot imagine how it is to work without repositories. But it, how do you develop the habit of writing good code and doing things carefully because you worked in such an environment? How do you translate those skills into your world today? Because you have all these controls, but you still need to do some due diligence in a different way. You still need to ensure the quality of your product, quality of the code you're writing. So how do you translate those skills into what you're doing today?
That's a good question. So, I mean, yeah, the technology's definitely moved on, right? So today, unit testing, CI/CD pipelines, auto rollback alarms, things like that, they kind of they're there as standard. But I think you've still got the fundamental of I'm doing this for a reason.
Mm.
I don't get me wrong. As an engineer, I'm sure people enjoy writing code, but they're not writing code because they enjoy it. They're writing code because someone has a need for that code, right? So I think you still have the mindset of what I build needs to work, or what I build, it needs to work today, but it needs to work tomorrow. So I'm doing this.
Mhm.
Someone else is going to do something in 6 months' time. How might that impact what I'm doing? Can I build it in such a way that ideally it fails before it gets to production?
Right.
But worst case, if something goes wrong, it will go wrong in this manner. And a big problem is suddenly a small problem or something like that. But I think it's the tooling to do it is definitely a lot easier nowadays. But I still think fundamentally, you know, understanding why you're doing it, and the fact that, hey, if I get this wrong, this particular part of the business
Mm.
isn't going to function anymore. Or fast forwarding to today, yeah, if I get this wrong, maybe nobody's going to be able to sell anything on this website.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We like to say, or when I was at Amazon, we used to like to say that good intentions don't work. So even if you have the right intention, um, I think at Amazon, there is a principle that's really strong about you got to make the systems guard your good intentions. You cannot just rely on good intentions. So I guess that is something that you can do with today's tools. Make sure that they're doing the things that you actually intend them to do.
Yes. Yeah. And as you were speaking there, a story jumped to mind on this topic from my previous employer. So
Mhm.
when I was at the investment bank, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but we had a different guy on the team. He was doing some changes about something, and he had it working. He's like, right, this works. He'd written his own tests, and I'll do a dry run of the build, and then I can push my changes. And apparently, some test I wrote 6 months ago completely exploded. And he came to me at lunchtime. He said, I was doing this, and this test exploded. And I thought, oh, here we go. What have I done wrong, etc., like that. But he was like, thank you for writing that. You literally saved me from causing this problem, that problem. And it's like this test, like I'd written this test to test my changes, but I'd put some other stuff in there in terms of, if this test is now failing, you're probably doing this, and you shouldn't do this because this is coupled with this, and things like that. So yeah, I remember Jay coming up to me at lunchtime and like, man, you really saved me by putting those extra tests in there. And at the time, it was like, I vaguely recalled having done it.
Mhm.
I don't recall the specific test cases I put in, but when we went back and looked at it, it's like, yeah, no, if someone's going to get this wrong by accident, they're going to get it wrong by accident in this way, and that happened to be something he did.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You're putting systems in place to ensure that we're not tripped up by our intentions alone. And also, like, it just proves that any testing, any quality controls you put in place, that they're like your minions. They work for you even when you aren't in
Exactly.
the
Yes.
picture.
Yes. Yeah. And they don't get tired, right? They don't want to
No,
go on holiday. They're not rushing to catch a train or anything like that. Yeah,
no.
they're just there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that was the beginning. So if you don't mind me asking, it looked like you kind of experimented a little bit with, where you kind of want to stay for a long time in the beginning of your career, before you ending up at RBS for 6 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What were you looking for?
Yeah, so it's maybe not the best example. Maybe there's a story in here somewhere. So
Hmm.
my first job, I graduated from university, applied to a bunch of places,
Hmm.
and I accepted the first job I got offered.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I've got a job, woohoo.
Yeah.
As I say, it was really good. I think I was there for 3.5, 4 years,
Hmm.
something of that nature.
Hmm.
Definitely helped grow me in terms of the software writing as well, but the other aspects where it was quite a small company, there were opportunities to lead projects and things like that. So that was good.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it was like, I'd been there 3.5, 4 years. I decided it was time to, move on, do something new. There were certain avenues of technology that I thought I want to explore this, and I went somewhere. I went somewhere else. I was only at that place actually for just over a year.
Hmm.
So maybe there's a story there, especially early on in your career. I
Hmm.
mean, I benefited a lot from what I did at that company as well.
Right.
But there were some circumstances that basically meant after a year or so that the job that I was hired to do wasn't quite there anymore. And it was
Mm.
early on in my career. I thought I don't want to move down this particular avenue,
Hmm.
and so I decided to look for something else. Maybe that's good advice for someone that's just starting out. It's a lot easier to change direction at the beginning. I say so.
Right.
If it's not quite right, um, you know, you empower yourself to fix that.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually you can tie it back. I feel like a lot of life lessons you can tie back to how we write software. It's a lot cheaper to change things closer to development than than closer to
Exactly.
production.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so
Yes. I
when you're
didn't need to refactor my career
no,
15 years in. No.
yeah, 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 I love that. Refactor my career. Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be using that. Okay. Um, Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So with all of this experience as a junior engineer, then you went to RBS. So did you join RBS as a senior engineer, or did you take some time to grow to senior in RBS?
No. I didn't join RBS as a senior engineer, so I guess it was probably the equivalent of an SDE2
Mm-hmm.
at my role before.
Like a
So
mid-level.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Where I was before, so I was at a software company that was doing trading software,
Mm-hmm.
and then I moved into RBS to do software within. So there was a little bit of continuity there. I did have ownership over a particular area of what I was doing before, so I'd had that sort of exposure, but no, it was very much a kind of mid-level engineer as I joined. I ultimately we can have a conversation actually about a particular manager I had at the time. It's all positive, so I don't mind
Mm-hmm.
sharing. But I joined as kind of a mid-level engineer. I moved into a kind of senior engineer position, and then ultimately on to be the tech lead of that team.
Nice.
That's the position I was at. I was at that position, and the natural career progression in a lot of companies is mid-level engineer, senior engineer, software development manager. Um,
Yeah.
I was kind of at that pivot point. I didn't think I wanted to move into management. I thought I wanted to stay in kind of an IC role.
Mm-hmm.
And then this Amazon opportunity crept up, and I thought, let's see what happens there. And ultimately, I ended up changing. Um, but yeah, would you
Right.
like me to speak about the manager ever so slightly?
We'll come to that, but I
Okay.
think that one place where a lot of us really struggle is to get from mid-level to senior engineer. I think that jump is such a huge jump for everyone. I think it's way bigger than junior to mid-level, and I could even argue that it's bigger than senior to principal. But that I want to spend some time talking about that transition from mid-level to senior. How did you find it? Did you find it difficult? And what were the key things that you changed to get to senior?
Yeah, great question. So, whilst I was there as a mid-level engineer sort of thing,
Mhm,
I did become very close to the technology. Again, I I had a connection with the business people. This was purely by
mm,
chance. I I think I actually mentioned this in one of your blog posts, but
mhm.
you know, like the corporate office setup. So you've
Yeah.
got banks of desks.
Yes.
There just happened to be an empty desk next to where I was sitting. And what
Yes.
it meant was when other tech teams or people from the business wanted something from our team, they would come over and they would see this empty seat. So they'd have somewhere to sit and ask their questions. And then
Mhm,
there was this guy, me, to their right, next to this empty seat. So that they would naturally ask me. So I didn't mind that. You know, I was willing to have those conversations with people. If I knew the answer, I'd tell them the answer. If I didn't know the answer, I'd go and find it out. So I did, you know, I guess I got up to speed more quickly in terms of knowing why it is I'm doing what I'm doing and having that connection with the business users. And as a
mhm,
result of that, I became trusted in, you know, oh, if Adam's doing this, touch wood, it should work. If Adam said this is a problem, it's something we need to look into. So I had that senior connection before I was actually operating in that role.
mm.
You mentioned, right, going from um, essentially SD2 to SD3 is maybe
Yeah.
harder than going to principal. I can identify that. I think a lot of engineers um, see this when they go through that transition. It's the point where you move from doing work to being able to ask other people to do some work. I
Mm.
think that's like a really big kind of pivot point in any engineer's growth. You know, and you're probably at the point you're given some stuff to do and you're meant to farm it out, and you're like, Bhavna, excuse me, would you mind having a look at this if you're not too busy, if it's okay, blah 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 blah. You know, it's a difficult. I think that's a difficult change in mindset at the point where you're not just given work, you're actually given stuff to give to other people, and you're kind of starting to oversee them. Um,
Yeah. You
sorry.
know what I love about your answer is that you said three different things that touched upon connecting with people. So you talked about connecting with people, your business users, and understanding why you're building what you're building. You touched upon building trust with people, becoming that trusted person, so that when there is a decision to be made about who is going to be senior engineer, then they can think about your name like that. And the third was to deliver through others or ask other people to do some work. And I'm sure that in there somewhere there's also talking to your manager and convincing your manager that this is important work to get done for our team because X. So it's all so much people related. I really wish to tell everybody who's listening to this that by the time you're SD2 or mid-level and you've worked on your tech skills and the fact that you're mid-level kind of already talks about your good tech skills. um, the thing that will get you to the next level is all about connecting with people, and improving your skills around that and bringing that back to technology and bringing that back to your solutions is so important. I think that I myself got tripped up around that point, and it took me quite a while. The thing that I think took a while for me was to build that trust. um, I This is my assessment of myself. I
Okay,
think that I had the skills to deliver through others, and I had the skills to be able to convince people to trust me. But I didn't know that that is something that I had to do. I didn't put in the effort to do that because I didn't know it wasn't on my list. I was looking at other people and seeing the types of projects they were working on, and everything I was trying to do was to get bag one of those projects. But I wasn't thinking about, okay, do I have the trust from person A, B, C, and D? Um, and if I had put in effort, I probably would have gotten those opportunities a little easier.
that's some good insight. Can I ask? So
Yes.
in terms of like moving from the SD2 to the SD3 position,
Mhm.
um, like yeah, how much of it was a Because I've experienced this myself in my own growth. A kind of, if you want it, go and get it, versus if I do a good enough job as an SDE2, I will be handed this opportunity. Maybe there's some differences in there, right? I know I was very much. It took my manager to say, look, we're not going to promote you and then see if you can do this thing, right? You need to go off and do this. If you think there's a gap, go and own it. Come back to me. Demonstrate that you can do it, and then getting promoted to the next levels a bit easier.
I mean, I think that by this point, many people already know that you got to do the work at the next level. Nobody is going to promote you just on the basis of they think you're going to do a good job at the next level. So let's get that out of the way. I definitely knew that I had to show them that I can do work at that level. How much of it is just doing the work versus uh, putting yourself out there and kind of reaching for more? I think there's no doubt that if you have your head down and you're doing an amazing job as an SD2, all you will get is you might get a great bonus because you're the top performer on the team. You're the top performer for the band across your organization, company, whatever. But nobody's even gonna consider you for the promotion. I think that I had a little bit of that tendency as well. And it started very early for me. I always used to think that let my work speak for itself. I shouldn't be kind of tooting my own horn. I should always try and get my work to do the talking for me, and have my head down. Don't really get involved with stuff that isn't in my immediate vicinity, etc., etc. I thought that's what would get me to the next level. In fact, that's what that's what gets you from junior to mid-level, but that's not what gets you from mid-level to senior. So it took me a really long time to understand that, and I wish that there were more resources, or maybe I was blind. I wasn't really looking for these resources, and I wasn't paying attention to what actually was needed. When it came to it, I think that I had a natural flair for these things around what actually gets you to senior. So once I realized it, I think the transition was pretty quick.
Yeah, no, that's some good insight there. I think one of the things that really surprised me, this wasn't a specific project, but I guess I'm going to go back to knowing why you're doing what you're doing, right? We had like speaking to some of the business users. So in financial banking, investment banking. So you can imagine you've got a portfolio of trades, right? And there are inputs into their value. It might be an exchange rate or the price of gold or how close you are to peak of the day. But it's a function of all these factors.
Yeah.
And you every day you take those factors, you say, your portfolio is now worth this. The next day you say it's worth this. Now, one of the things I managed to get exposed to just by having these conversations was they wanted a mechanism to say, right, it was worth this much on Monday and it was worth this much on Tuesday. But can you help explain why? And they were able to articulate, well, it's really valuable for our business to be able to say, the interest rate did this and this happened, or the price of gold did this and this happened. And I was like, wow, it was one of those eureka moments. It's like, well, for me, I'm plugging in values into this function on a Monday, and I'm plugging in values to this function on a Tuesday. It's not beyond the wit of man to say I will just swap the Monday value with a Tuesday value and a Monday value with a Tuesday value, and say, of your 5 inputs into this thing, this is the impact this had one. And that was a piece of work I picked up and ran with. And from a technical point of view, I don't want to say it was trivial. It wasn't trivial. There were some quirks and caveats that go with it, but it wasn't the biggest, most complicated technical challenge. But the insight it gave to those business users in terms of, right, okay, this is why your portfolio is behaving in this manner.
Right.
Yeah, that was like a wow moment, and it's weird because knowing you've solved that big problem for them, it's kind of like the enjoyment you would get as a more junior engineer when you've I've released a framework that does this, that, and the other. The really cool. I've done this really cool tech thing. Whereas I think you naturally move into a world of I did this really cool tech thing too. I solved this really cool problem.
For these
It's
people,
yes,
real
yeah,
people.
I think at least for me, that was easier to understand looking back on it. You don't necessarily appreciate it's happening at the time, or at least I didn't. But on reflection, yeah, it was. I'm
awesome.
solving these problems for these people.
I love that. I hope people can take away learnings from this, because this actually explains why it is important to know why you're building what you're building, because you hear that all the time, but an example like this is the reason why.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, right. And if you know why you're building what you're building, maybe some of the questions that come from within your team don't have to propagate all the way up to that business user, right? You're then able to answer those and say, right, we can move a bit quicker now. We don't need to set up a meeting with so and so who's in this time zone or only has this calendar availability once a month or something like that, right? You're able to make progress without going back to your end customer, and that's for me comes from this is why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yes, building trust also comes with what you just described. People come to you.
That's it.
You're the
Yes,
go-to person.
Yeah, and people that you sync with once a month, they need to be confident, right, that when you're making those interim decisions on their behalf, oh no, don't do it like this, do it like this, because what we're actually trying to solve is A rather than B. You need to get those decisions right, but they need to be comfortable that you're moving in the right direction.
I think I have a fair understanding of what got you from mid-level to senior. Then you join Amazon. I know that the team that we work for, by the way, which was a selection and contribution platform. Did I get that right?
Correct. You did, yes.
Which is basically the backend systems that support Amazon's gigantic product catalog, is a great team to work for. I think the 4 years I spent at Amazon was the time that my tech skills went from here to here. It was really transformational, that space that we worked in. Well, you still work there, but there's so much scale to deal with, so many moving parts, just a million components talking to each other, so many dependencies, and so many complications. And we have a bunch of leaders that are very aggressively trying to simplify systems. So I think it's a very interesting space to work in. This is where you grew from senior engineer to principal engineer. Adam, tell us the secret. Share your secrets. What was, if you had like top 3 things you did to get to principal, and I had to write a listicle somewhere, what would that be?
I don't know about sharing my secrets. I can share my story. It might end up being things not to do. I don't know. But yeah, no, it is a really massive and exciting space. I think just to put some more color on that. So I mean, Amazon does lots of things, right? We have AWS, we have Prime Video, we have all sorts of devices, things like that. The area that I work in and that you worked in previously is the one that's been there since the beginning. And then you get into, there's data that's been there for longer than some people have been alive, systems and things like that. There's a whole world of complexities go with it, but I absolutely love the challenge that goes with that. In terms of how I got from where I was to where I am now, so I guess, some logistics. So I joined STP as you described. I was in one team. I moved to another team. Our org was growing. I was chosen to lead that team based on some of what I've done in the first team. Our org grew a bit more. I started to have some oversight over different teams there.
How did that happen? You can't magically start overseeing 2 teams from one. Did you start doing it out of your own interest? Was it assigned to you? How did that happen?
I guess so. As you touched upon before, right? You don't get promoted to the next level, and then people sit back and watch to say,
Hmm.
are you going to perform at that level? You have to demonstrate that. And I'm very fortunate that you I was given the opportunity to go off and let's see how you can do with this, and let's see
Okay.
how you can do this. So bigger problems, wider impacting problems, things like that. But I guess yeah, I don't know. I'm going to end up quoting what we've already spoken about, but in terms of understanding why you're doing what you're doing,
Mm.
earning the trust of your stakeholders, actually delivering something, delivering value.
Hmm.
I mean, delivery is a super important part, right?
Right.
You can
Of
have the
course.
best thing in the world that is done to the most impressive standard, but if it's only 98% done and you don't get value until you get to 100,
Yeah.
no customers are going to benefit from that. So, um, yeah, I don't think I'm going to pause. I'm going to say it and then I'm going to reflect to see if I actually believe it. I don't think I did anything fundamentally different that
Okay.
I hadn't done before.
Okay.
Um, I yeah, I guess it's just slightly bigger, slightly broader problems. Getting the support of your management chain to be able to work on those. I'm sure there was people in the background making sure that I didn't veer too far off course, um,
Mm.
but having those opportunities. Actually, touching upon there, so we haven't really discussed this, but getting things wrong is a great way of growing, right? I think you
Interesting.
learn more from like the odd mistake or the odd problem that you've caused than you do um, from necessarily getting it right all the time. I can think back to there, there was something I did at my second company. So I was given this problem. Sorry to
No, no, of
rewinding
course.
companies, but
Yeah.
I was given this problem to do. It's like you need to do this and you need to do this, but the manager just have to add it. But if you can think a better way of doing it, then by all means.
Hmm.
And I probably took that as more of a challenge than I should have done, because I did come up with a better way of doing it. It was something that ended up being pseudo real time as opposed to once every 24 hours,
Okay.
and having to manage with conflicts and stuff like
What
that.
can go wrong?
Um, what can go wrong? Yes, a great segue to the next bit. So it worked, it pretty much worked in general, but there was this. So it was to do with syncing data between two systems where either
Hmm.
one could be the source of truth, but the other one had to come into
Sure.
consistency.
Hmm.
And yeah, there was some fun aspects about getting that finished that maybe we can discuss as well. But basically, there was an edge case where if something went wrong,
Hmm.
it created this record in one of the systems that it shouldn't have done, and it's kind of an empty record. And then it would sync it to the other one, but that would trigger it syncing back. So there was this very slow kind of
Right.
infinite feedback loop. Um, uh, yeah, and I remember like one of my colleagues who happened to be sitting opposite me, she was dealing with a support ticket saying, there were all these blank records in this customer database and I just deleted them, blah, blah, blah. And I had this, oh, hang on a minute. I was like, you just deleted them? She's like, yeah, 10 minutes ago. Can you check again? And she's like, oh, they're back. And it's like, oh, I
Right.
now understand what's going on here. But that taught me about some concurrency constraints in
Right.
this particular aspect of that I was looking at that,
Hmm.
wouldn't have so easily learned otherwise. And that
Interesting.
stuck with me now.
Interesting. So,
Um,
so would you translate that as you have to take risks?
uh, I mean, I do think you have to take risk. I guess more of what I take from that one is it's okay to get things wrong.
Okay.
I'm sure we're sitting here talking about all the cool things that I've
Yeah.
done and how I was able to get from senior engineer to principal. I'm sure people that I've worked with that might be listening to this can building up a big mental list of, well, hang on, yeah, but you broke this and you did this and I had to fix it and things like that, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's
No.
just part of how you
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah. I think that touching upon that is also really important because sometimes societal conditioning can cause you to be very scared of making mistakes, but mistakes are also really valuable. So you shouldn't be so scared of making them. That's
Yes,
another thing to take away.
and equally, again, this is probably the mid-level to senior. It's okay to
Mm.
put your hand up and say, sorry, I don't understand what you're talking about, right? It's
Mm.
okay.
Yes.
I don't know. That
Yes.
that can be slightly scary, especially in a room full of people that you perceive to be more senior than you.
Yeah.
But it's actually quite empowering. Hey,
Mhm.
I'm really sorry, I don't understand this. Can you just explain it to me for a moment? And those 2 or 3 minutes of them setting the context, suddenly your eyes are open and you're able to then go on and make that progress.
And you've probably helped some other shy people in the room too.
Yes, that's it. Yes, it's good to be seen to, hey, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you should know it either.
Yeah.
It's okay to ask. And I mean, I
Absolutely.
think that helps as you move up the levels, because generally, as maybe coming back to your question, going from senior engineer to principal, you're
Mm.
only going to get bigger, broader, more ambiguous problems to solve,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so much of that at the beginning starts with um, can you just explain this to me? And you get it
Yeah.
explained in really simple terms, and you have to go back and say, right, can you please dumb it down a level? I just want you to understand I'm starting from absolute zero here. I have no idea what you need to do to train this model, or what this particular classification of this thing means over here, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I completely vibe with that. I'm the first person to put my hand up and say, "What the hell was that?"
Yes,
Yeah. I don't have any problems with coming off as uninformed or ignorant, because I don't want to be ignorant for the rest of my life. I want to know
that's
what
it.
that thing is.
Some of these things, though, right now, you probably understand in immense detail, right?
Yeah.
Someone will say, "Oh, you want to know about how this works, or this particular thing, or the consequence of this?" Go and speak to Bhavna.
Mm.
She understands this inside out, and and
It's only
it
because
all
you.
started as that blank sheet of paper, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's a very inspiring thought. um, okay, so just I think we're getting to the end of this. Um, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a challenge, and
Okay.
this is for my own selfish reasons as well. I You said that when you move from mid-level to senior, you move from doing the thing yourself to asking people to do the thing.
Yes.
When you move from senior to principal, what is the equivalent there?
So I guess, yeah, it's when you begin, it's literally like you've given a bunch of tasks and you have to dish them out amongst engineers on your team. I think
Mhm.
as you grow as a senior engineer, you get more into the realms of, I could solve this,
Mhm.
but why don't I trust Bhavna to solve this?
Mhm.
And if the
Mhm.
answer is I do trust Bhavna to solve it, then let Bhavna solve it. Let so and
Yeah.
so solve it. It's good for their growth. It's good for their growth as well. I think for me, the big the big jump from senior to principal is, so you're operating on a slightly different time horizon. You should be looking at
Mm.
what are the next set of problems going to be, and what do we need to do, what do we need to align now so that we know what we're doing in the future. The big jump for me was kind of I'm going to describe it as the losing ownership, in
Right.
the sense that, like, uh, you want to deliver value for customers, right? You want to take a problem, you want to see it through to completion.
Mhm.
One of the things that I found surprising, for me personally, like moving into the more principal role, was, okay, I've aligned this, and so is doing this, so I don't actually need to be involved anymore.
Mm.
I'm not there. I'm not the one driving to this completion. But it's cool because it means you're off looking at the next problem.
Yes.
We spoke before about earning trust with your stakeholders and stuff like that. I trust so and so is going to run this to completion. I trust so and so is going to come back to me with any problems that they think I would have an interest in and stuff like that. But it's kind of, at least for me, it was. Don't get me wrong. You're not kind of abandoning the project or anything, but
No.
there are other people that can run with it, right? And you
Yes.
you then end up being someone that's more informed rather than doing the informing.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting transition.
Yeah. So would it be right to say that it's an extension of a similar type of transformation? It's just that the pieces that you're trusting other people with are way bigger now. So
Yes,
the,
yeah,
okay. Yeah. I understand that.
but I do like to look at it that way. So it's a, why wouldn't I trust someone else to do this? I think
Yes.
that's quite a positive mindset,
Mm-hmm.
to be in. Maybe it's, why wouldn't I trust so and so to do this? I think they'll do well. I might need to just, help guide them slightly, because this is a stretch opportunity for them as opposed to something they're familiar with. But you still connected to the details, but not as much. And that person's then growing themselves, right? Maybe they're making the small mistakes, but they'll be learning from it.
That is amazing. I think I have so many takeaways from this call. I am going to go away and make notes and hopefully bring some value to people who are following me on social media as well as myself. I did this for myself, and this is very much a mentoring call for myself. But then I thought, let's make this call public, because everybody can benefit from this. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for your time today. And I wonder what you're doing later today. Any plans?
What am I doing? I'm probably going to do something with the kids. England's playing Scotland in the Six Nations this afternoon. I think it's at 4:00. So we'll sit down and watch that. Both my boys are fans.
I'm going to expose myself a little bit. What sport is that?
Oh, rugby. So Six
Rugby.
Nations. Yeah, it's an annual tournament between Six Nations. England's one of them. Scotland's another. Yeah, fingers crossed. We've not fared too well recently against them, but hopefully things will change.
All right. Hope your team does the thing you're hoping it to do. I'm not into sports.
We could save that for another conversation.
Yeah.
But no. Thank you for having me on to chat. It's been really good. Best of luck. Best of luck with the podcast. I'm sorry that you've peaked on episode 1. Guest 2 won't be nearly as interesting, but maybe almost as much.
We'll see. Yeah, it's quite possible. Well, thank you so much, Adam. And I'll let you go now.
Good speaking to you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.